that screen was just a little darker, you could do like that Inception.
Yeah.
Let's see.
All right, so we got the chat room on.
I'll be able to see questions.
I'll be able to see questions, that's what I wanna see.
That's beautiful.
Yeah. And this chair has to lock the light.
Yeah, I'm thinking.
Like that, just.
Put it on there.
Is it 6 yet? How many?
It is 6:01.
6:01, all right. Okay, is everybody ready? Okay. Okay. Oh, I'm coming through pretty good. Hello, everybody. We're here to discuss in a public forum, and hope we can get a lot of participation in the chat, about suspensions of our young people. And I think that people, I might be a little too loud because I'm getting feedback. But our people, 4, 5, 6, and 7-year-olds, I must admit I was shocked when I heard that. Not being involved in the school system as much as you guys are. Miss Brown has been a principal for several years and a well-known educator. I'd like to start this thing off because we have some really good solid questions, and of course, entertaining from the chat. So let's begin with the basics. And we talk about in-school suspension, out-of-school suspension, and all of that. I'm going to try to educate my own self on it. But what is an out-of-school suspension?
Suspension really is a forced removal from the school. And obviously it's going to be out of school, and that's different than an in-school suspension where a student might be removed from a classroom and then taken to a different room to receive instruction. And what's interesting is that there are two kinds of suspensions. There's long-term suspensions and short-term suspensions. And the ones that we're really addressing are the short-term suspensions, although by state statute, that can be up to 10 school days. Mm-hmm. So it's a forced removal from the school for up to 10 school days.
Mr. Brown, you don't went up there with, well, Mr. Rawlings, but you have North Carolina experience.
Yes.
Not that this count your experience, but you have North Carolina experience. What do you think about the unfairness of, and the demographics show that there is a sort of a lopsided thing?
The equity question is what
Yes.
you're asking about.
Exactly.
Well, I think my experience is that we've had the equity question for a long time. I started in the system in 1973, and then at Rawlings, there were a lot of suspensions that were taking place, and at that time, every day the intercom would come on, there were names being called to the office, and they would be suspended, and everybody knew they were suspended. And then I saw an additional increase in suspensions when they did the law and order paradigm in our country. It spilled down into the schools as well. And then when we did zero tolerance, that was a real key thing, because what it did was take 5-year-olds who was pushing each other on the playground. That became a fight, just like it was for a 15-year-old. So we started treating young kids the same way we were treating older children, with zero tolerance. So we've been building up and increasing suspensions in the things that children are suspended for, especially the young children. And we added sheriff's deputies to the schools, and we began to criminalize some of the simple things that children would do, things that were natural for children to do. So that's how we got here to so many suspensions. And then when you think about the diversity, that you have less diverse staff over that 50 years declining, that's also increased suspensions, because people are showing little or not are not showing a lot of knowledge about dealing with people from different diverse groups, as well as dealing with children with exceptional children. They're also shown to have a high disparity when it comes to suspension. So if you talk about, you get the minorities high, and then you get the exceptional children's high, and then out of that group, the boys are higher than everybody else. Mm-hmm. We do have a problem. The data has always said we have a problem. We just need to be committed and have the courage to solve it, as some other states have done.
And let me just take a second to introduce our panel. We have Mr. Peter Rawitsch, who went first. You're a former principal also.
I'm a former first grade teacher.
Former first grade teacher. Of course, Ms. Brown, as I introduced you, you are a former principal and community activist, Mr. Vance Williams. Sir, you are the, I don't want to say you're the leader of the group, but you are an activist and you are in the community every day, 24/7. What is your perspective on what's going on in our schools today as far as suspensions are concerned?
Well, to let you know, we've been doing this for 17 years. Mm-hmm. 17 years, but not only activism, but advocacy, dealing with the schools, whether it's IEPs, representing mothers, advocating for families, advocating for IEPs to be modified. That's an individual educational plan for children with mental health issues. I also work with children transitioning out of juvenile detention into the school system and advocating and working as a mediator for families. I've been doing that for 17 years. One of the biggest components is, I would say, cultural competency. And I would say being so myopic, so boxed in, not willing to try other forms of education. And it's out there, but you have to have a willingness to say, let's try something different. Because we keep doing the same thing over and over again. And if you look at if you look at just this heightened suspension level, even if you look at the level of restraints, like I think we're ranked 3rd in North Carolina for the most restraints. Those type of numbers should tell you, let's do something different. Instead of using punitive methods, let's use a more public health approach instead of correction. And that's the thing about public health, and that's the reason why I was so attracted to Love Our Children and their initiative, because that's a community-based organization with a public health approach, and not necessarily this correction or this punitive method when dealing with our children. What the organization represented is the alternative. And I think the way that the school board and a lot of other entities are looking at it as something that will counter what they're doing. And I think it's more supportive than anything. This is another way for you to think about it. If anything, you should be grabbing and say, I'm glad you came to me. I'm glad you brought this up, because it's needed. Because if we look at the school to prison pipeline, and we look at our suspension rate, and then if you were to go into the average school and do an assessment, even have a conversation with a social worker and said, let's have a conversation, not necessarily names, or the behavior concerning your high risk, individuals, and you will see a pattern. You will see a pattern of suspension. You will see a pattern of being disconnected from the classroom setting, where it came a point in time where they said, I'm not going to school. And since they weren't going to school, where were they? In the streets. So this kind of leads to that behavior, and we need to find alternatives. And I think that if we look at the website, Love Our Children, and you see some of those alternatives, it's definitely going to spark something in you that says, you know what, we should have been using this years ago. There are other methods besides suspending
Can I follow up on
Yeah,
what you
please,
said?
please.
I just want to say, I want to introduce the idea that this is an upstream method.
Yes.
It's a front-end way to start diminishing the negative impact of suspensions. If we start with a 4-year-old, then you aren't suspending them as much in first grade, and then second grade, and then third grade. And that ultimately means that you're not suspending them in 10th grade and 11th grade. And all the positive things that are associated with keeping kids in school, you start getting the benefit. But you have to stop. You have to start. And so we want to turn the valve off to the pipeline. That's what we're doing. Because what is going on now is they're dealing with the back end and everything flowing, and they're just trying to catch a couple of kids on the back end. We're trying to help all the kids on the front end.
But let me say this here. I'm seeing Pete, you know what? I'm seeing Pete and Ms. Brown, and I sat home and I watched the Board of Education meetings. I can name at least 3 occasions where you guys have went up there and spoke to the board concerning this very issue. How receptive have they been now? Now Vance over there has done a pretty good presentation and a pretty good opening statement for the case. But the jury is the board. And how receptive have they been to what Love Our Children is trying to put forward?
I'll start. I'm glad you mentioned the board because that really is our primary audience. The board has the power to change policy, which really is a one-size-fits-all policy. As Veronica mentioned, it's treating 4, 5, 6, and 7-year-olds the same as it would treat 14, 15, 16, and 17-year-olds. So the reason we go to the board meetings and the reason we speak to the board is because they're the ones who ultimately have the power to set the standard, set the bar very high for all the schools. Veronica calls it a guarantee that our youngest learners will not be kicked out of school. When we speak to the board, they, as a practice, they do not respond to the speakers.
Right.
So we don't get any feedback on the days or the evenings that we speak. But we have had the opportunity to meet individually with all the board members. And they say, we understand what you're saying, we agree with what you're saying, keep coming to the board meetings, keep saying it, but we need more time, we have to wait. Well, we've been waiting a really long time. You might recall back in 2016, the Board of Education had a strategic plan that included ending elementary school suspensions. Nothing happened. That was 2016. So we've been waiting 6 years for them to finally act upon this, and it feels as though they're just kicking it down the road, when in fact they have the ability to change it at their next meeting.
Let's get to the board. We got need a couple of questions. Mr. Roberta said Peter very distorted too, and
I think those are comments about the audio.
okay, some comments about the audio, so we can get that squared away. That would be great.
I was going to follow up with Peter as well, because one of the comments, 3 comments. One is, we're going to get to it.
Yes.
Okay, but in the meantime, you haven't got to it in almost 50 years. So why are we giving ourselves permission to harm children even more and create another generation of children's parents who have failed to be educated? One of the other things they speak to is staff development. Well, I was cleaning out my garage and I was looking at my staff development. I found a paper from like 1980 and 1992, and the staff development about diversity and behavior issues was there. We asked them to give us a report on staff development, And we sent that information and gave it to the board. We got information from the administrative staff, and then we gave that information to the board about the fact that they have enough staff. And now staff development, you can give them more staff development, but we have talked to some educators, and 2 of them were behavioralists, and they said it's not more staff development that this kind of needs. It needs fidelity and accountability to the money they've already spent and the training they've already done on staff development. They say they need more resources. Well, what we say is, right now we're flush with cash. It's a stressful time for adults, and I would imagine it's even more of a stressful time for 4, 5, and 6-year-old children. So we need to help the adults, and we need to help the children. And they need to be asking, how do we get this done? Not what they can't do. But they never ask those questions. If you go to their committee meetings, the EDI meetings, the policy meetings, the board meetings, since I've been going, I think I've been going every month since March, and then I went back and looked at some of the other meetings. No one discusses how we get this done. How do we stop harm to children? To me, it's indefensible for you not to ask that question and try to solve the problem.
Why isn't that question asked? Mr. Williams?
Why isn't a lot of questions asked? I mean, it's so many, but I think it's just this culture of complacency, this culture of I know it all. There is not a cohort of teachers, seasoned teachers, that they consult with to say, okay, what methods are you using in your classroom? We have some brilliant teachers. We have some seasoned teachers that you can look at their approach and you can say, wow, maybe that's something that we could develop a model around, as far as this is an alternative. So it's a lot of things that are within the Board of Education. Their overall culture is very toxic. But this is the thing. While they're developing their policy, they have this way of saying, be resilient. But during that time of being resilient, there is people being uncomfortable, people being disconnected from the system, disconnected from just the mentality of things are going to get better, right? It's this hopelessness feeling while policy is being developed, because during that timeline, there is no supportive services. So while my children are being suspended and you're trying to figure it out, while you're figuring it out, it's like this, like keep enduring this torture. You know, we'll get to you when we'll get to you, while we're developing our policies, while we're trying to figure it out. But in the meanwhile, there is definitely no supportive services for families. There is no supportive services for students. Even if we look at the alternatives that they have in place, those alternatives really maximize negative behavior, because there is no positive behavior intervention, a model that teachers usually use in the classroom, right? It's always this punitive method. Teachers that use positive behavior intervention should be supported, should be highlighted, because it's a good model, it's a good approach. So,
and I want to say they do have that, and some schools have adopted that, and they have the training. But what I'm going to say, because I worked as the special assistant for eliminating the achievement gap in 2002, 2004, and they had expected to eliminate the achievement gap, and the achievement gap also was about equity issues by 2010. So now what they do, they they have the training, they write plans, but they don't follow through, and no one is held accountable. If you change the policy, it stops immediately you suspending someone, a 5-year-old, for disrespect. And so staff development without the policy isn't going to get us where we want to go. Staff development without resources won't get us there. But staff development, more people without the policy won't get us there. The only way you have a warranty for those children to keep them in school with, for minor infractions such as insubordination, disrespect, the only way you guarantee that for every child in every school is that you pass the policy. That's the only thing will give them a warranty that on any given day in any school, a teacher will come in, and if they use profanity or call someone a B, and she sends them to the office, that they are going to stay in school. It's going to be a teachable moment, and they will be sent back to class at an appropriate time after they've had an intervention.
Isn't this a knee-jerk reaction though? And here's the part, I'm gonna take a point of personal privilege. Here's the part that gets to me. You're suspended a 4 and 5-year-old for disrespect. We just got out of the crib.
And they're babies, 6 years. I mean, when you do pre-K to second grade, 4, 5, 6, and 7-year-olds, they are literally babies. And I say this all the time. They are still believing in Santa Claus, and even if they don't have a chimney, they'll tell you he's coming down the chimney. Tooth Fairy, the bunny rabbit. I mean, it's actually, if you think about it, it's madness.
Yes, it's insane. And let me, I've been jotting stuff down. And what I'm seeing and what I'm getting is that the school board, to your proposals and your assessments, have been courteous, but courtesy doesn't
Change policy.
change
Both
policy.
do.
And they say, well, come on in and yes, keep coming to the board meetings. It's gonna be all right. And then when you're out of the office, it's off to something else. That won't get it done. And as you guys have pointed out, you've been at this 2016, it's almost 2022. What goals for the future?
But one of the things before Peter answer that question, I was going to say an important thing is, I mean, you had talked about the board, is that they all the elementary schools did school improvement plans. There were over 600 actions in the school improvement plan. There was not one word not one time was suspension in a single elementary school improvement plan. So sometimes you say, well, what does the board think? Well, I think that tells us one of the things they think, and that's a 2-year plan. And they have yet to, and those plans were done without a district-wide school improvement plan, which normally you would never do because you do your district strategic plan, the district strategic plan, and then all the school plans are connected to that. But we operate like every school is an island in our community, and that's problematic. So some kids may be suspended for 5 days over here for using an inappropriate word or being abusive or bullying, and someone over here gets nothing because they are treated with appropriate behavior. And someone over here gets 3 days, or someone over here gets 7 days.
No uniform policy.
None, especially for minor infractions.
So now, back to the question. The future.
Well, one of the things we're looking forward to is the next school board election, and that'll be November 2022. So we're hopeful that candidates will discuss this, and that this could be something that they address We believe it's a nonpartisan issue. We hope both Republican and Democratic and independent candidates will acknowledge that we're talking about our children, and we need to do what's best for children, and there shouldn't have to be any party lines on that. But our hope is that we can elect re-elect some members and elect other new members that will be pro-children in terms of protecting them and making sure that we keep them in school where they have the best opportunity to learn and also to get the services they require.
What's the harm being done when kids are just, I think you mentioned that they're out on the streets, once they're suspended, they're out on the streets, do wrong and get into whatever mischief things happen. Is this harm everlasting or is it a temporary harm? What else is detrimental to the welfare of these kids once they're suspended?
If there is no supportive services, if there is no alternatives, this is what you see. You see the numbers for juvenile detention. You see the numbers for juvenile probation, right? The numbers speak for itself, right? Anytime you do a thing, right, and you say, well, this is my method, this is my methodology, I believe that this works, right? I definitely want to see some evidence-based practices. I want to see, okay, if you say that this works, I should see something in there that benefits the community. I should see something in there that I say, okay, you guys are, but what I'm seeing is constantly DSS, juvenile detention, juvenile probation. They're totally integrated into the school system. You see a heightened probation department. You see a heightened that a lot of the cases that juveniles catch is at the school, right? So if you don't have supportive services, if you don't have community-based organizations,
such as?
A lot of them are out here. You got Soaring Eagles, you got Sokoto House, you have Switching Gears, you have a lot of different, what's happening now. You have a lot of people that are connected to the community. You have Hope, Brenda Galloway, that's connected to the community, that know the parents, that know the children, that should be in the schools. You have men groups. You also have fraternities, sororities that should be integrated into the school and act as a supportive service for students and parents.
The thing, he hit on something that I wanted to explore. He brought up a little bit earlier than I did, but since he made a segue into it. Community. Let's leave the board alone for a minute. Are you getting enough support from the community, i.e. parents, people who kids may have gone through school, but who can still contribute to the dialogue and the debate? Are you getting support from them that you need?
I would love to have more support, but one of the things that I have been trying to do is to focus singly on the policy, how suspension harms, because we didn't really get into but one issue, how they harm. Because what I have seen is that as soon as we try to solve this problem, that is school, is the children, the problem of suspending is something that the school as an institution does. That is what we're focusing on. We know that all those other problems are out there, and the children have hunger, and they have their homelessness, and they have parents would have drug addiction and all of those issues. But the school has no direct control over that. The school has direct control over the staff development it has, the resources it has, the discipline policies it has when the children enter the door. And what I have found out through my experience of 50 years in this county, that every time you start trying to reform the school, it'll take off just a little bit and then it gets hijacked by parent reform. The school has, if the school is paying the employees, they have total control over them. Let's make sure that they focus on them, which is what we should be talking about, and then they can work to try to influence the outside. But how are you going to clean up somebody else's house when yours is dirty?
That's true.
So control first all the things that you can control. That's what the school, and we're trying to do that with the policy, and it will solve one problem for 4, 5, 6, and 7-year-olds. It will keep them in school. It will help their reading and math. It will protect them from being out in the community, unsupervised. There's so many positives, but then the negatives are even more. So it's a no-brainer to me.
Okay, it's a no-brainer that has yet to come to fruition. We all agree it's a no-brainer.
Yes.
You probably got people on the board that agree it's a no-brainer. Yet action has yet to be taken at this late date, may I say.
Well, at one time, how long did it take women to get the right to vote?
Okay.
How long did it take me to be able to pay my money and sit any place I want on the bus?
I want to take a second to talk to the control man. 1 second. Is it possible that I can do this without the mic?
You can if you'd like.
Yeah. I'd like to try so we won't get so much feedback. And I think it might be better for the audience. Make it a little bit more pleasant.
Yeah, the people on Zoom won't be able to hear you though. Unless you speak up, the people on Zoom may not be able to hear very well.
I'll tell you what, I can put it a little lower.
Okay.
And maybe they can,
Maybe that'll work.
Yeah, because right now, I can even hear the feedback.
Yep.
So we can get it to where it took it on. And then make it a little bit more palatable for the home folks to get it going. And they'll let us know.
Need some help?
I think I got it. Right here. All right. So, how's that? That better?
Mm-hmm.
All right.
The Zoom will let us know.
They'll let us know.
Yeah.
Because when you get feedback, people are trying to get in the conversation. They don't want to break their train of thought. 4, 5, 7-year-olds being suspended. That's what got my problem. You got a school board that seems a little bit at an impasse. Or you got school board elections coming up. How passionate are you to make this an issue?
Extremely.
We're in it for the long run. We know that if we do nothing, nothing will happen. So we will continue to educate the community. We'll continue to show up at the board meetings, and we'll be following the candidates and hearing what they have to say as well. And hopefully, as I said, we'll be able to elect some new candidates that will put the concerns of the children first.
And we know that change takes action. And like Peter said, if you do nothing, you can't expect any change to happen at all. And so when you think historically, every significant thing that we have that we're proud of today that serves children, just even child labor laws, voting, civil rights, all of those things took people advocating for them. And you know you won when you've achieved the goal. And our goal is, as long as we're breathing, to continue this issue because it's one of humanity. How do you, I really say, how do you knowingly say that suspensions hurt children, especially the 4, 5, 6, and 7-year-olds? You can list all the ways that they hurt them, and you are willing to continue. We already had 3 generations, so now you continue to suspend, and when they come out, then they have another generation of kids whose parents have dropped out. If we want to stop the violence on the back end, you have to improve the education on the front end for all children.
Is this a thing that we have to wait to get a new board? Because look, I can remember when we had a board of one party, right? We had a board of one party, and you said, well, just wait till we get the new board. And we actually did get a new board, you know, or a change where one board took over and they had control. And what I'm hearing is that, hey, wait a minute, we waited to get a new board and still no results. So obviously something is going to miss when you change boards, which is what happened the past 2 years, and you still, as Ms. Brown is saying, coming up snake eyes.
Well, that's why we continue to educate the public, and why we hope each month to have more people in the community show up to let the board that this is a concern not just of a small group of people, but it's a community concern. I might add too, it was only 20 years ago that New Hanover County Schools ended corporal punishment. And that had been going on for a very long time.
Yeah.
Yes, thanks.
But also, and I'm just going to speak on behalf of Sokoto House, is that we listed this as a top priority. All of our the nonprofits and community-based organizations that are connected to Sokoto House, everybody is using their constituents. This is in the conversations. Friends, family, they're having this conversation. Prior to this, like, this was not like a conversation. It was happening in the school, right? Everybody knew about it. But until, like, people said, okay, there's an initiative, there's a petition, there's something behind it. Because I think before you said, like, how much community, you know, participation are you getting? The community is now waking up. They're now becoming aware of the situation. But we know just through history that with the school, there has always been this toxic relationship about retaliation. So some people are apprehensive, kind of saying, like, should I really I know that this is happening to my children. I know this is happening to some of my family members. I don't know how involved I want to get. But now you see other people coming on board and you say, okay, this is a fight. Yeah, I can sign this petition. Yeah, there's other people that believe the same thing and willing to fight too. So now you see this momentum that's growing behind this initiative. But we know that there has always been forms of retaliation every time somebody stands up and goes against something structurally violent, you know.
When 4 and 5-year-old kids get suspended, 7 and 8-year-old kids get suspended, where's the redress for the parent or parents? Where's the redress? I got a 5-year-old grandson who gets suspended.
I mean, they have a policy that tells you in there how you can raise questions about decisions that are made about you. But basically, what you would do is you would call the principal, and then if you were not satisfied with the principal, you could certainly call someone at central office. But the problem is, you have a policy that codifies suspension. You have a paradigm that codifies suspension.
So you have no redress.
You have a process of redress, but seldom seldom are you going to end up, that comes after. I'll give you an example. I had I had this student that ended up saying, it was a simple statement like, I'm going home and I'm going to shoot some birds with my BB gun. It was at the end of the day. And from that statement, because of the reaction that took place, he ended up being, having a sheriff's deputy with him. He ended up having suspension, book bag, check. And so I have to say that I was in a meeting, there was a meeting after that to address what the parents were concerned about. So that meeting itself went exceptionally well. I would have given the process of the meeting an A+. But that doesn't take away the trauma that that student had.
The damage has been done.
The damage has been done.
The trust was broken.
And the trust was broken. So yes, so you often can, I'm going to try, if I'm a principal, I'm going to try to make you feel better. Listen to what you said, but if the student has been out a day, 3 days, 5 days, the trauma and the experience that may cause him not to care about school. I mean, I was telling this to my next door neighbor, and he's about 77 years old, and I was talking about love our children, and the first thing he said is, 4 or 5, said, that's terrible. My first grade teacher made me hate school. And so he's 70 years old, and he remembers the negative experience he had. And when I said that, you could see it flowing from him. So that's just an example that we should understand that these kids experience trauma from this experience. We've thrown them out of a safe place.
Yes, and he definitely won't have a healthy relationship with that teacher. If he comes back to that school, right, and the teacher was the one that initiated, 9 times out of 10, that's going to be a toxic relationship.
Maybe with any teacher.
Yeah.
But that's one of the things that the research says, that it creates toxicity and trauma, and it also hurts students' bonds with
Yes.
adults, and so it's so many drastic things that take place in home children from suspensions.
I was going to add that there's at least 20 years of research on the effects of suspension. And it not only impacts the students that have been kicked out of school, it impacts the other students in the room. The research shows that school climate and classroom climate does not improve when a child is removed. And if you think about it, it makes sense. Now that the other students have fear, what if they do something wrong? What will happen to them? So suspensions not only traumatize the children who have been kicked out, but it has a negative impact on the other children.
Let me read something I got from the county manager. You know, there's this thing called ERP.
Yes.
And some of the funding was supposed to go to schools. I recently, not too long ago, had Mr. Chris Carter, who was the county manager on the show. And he said that so much money, he said some of this money will be allocated toward mental or social health in the schools. How much will that help?
I think if you use the personnel in places to serve children, that it will work well, and to work with parents. I mean, there's a big issue with mental health, and I'm going to just speak to a student was at not Lane. What's the school out on Carolina Beach that they talked about at the board meeting? Down Carolina Beach with Ashley. At two board meetings ago, they talked about fights and different things. Well, I was at Harris Teeter in line, and this young man was standing in line, and I asked him, did he go to high school? And he said, yeah. And I said, well, you know, they were talking about your school. And he said, yeah. I said, there are fights that people need mental health. They need support. And it's just terrible. They just need some help. And then as I was walking away, he said to me, he said, is that a real thing? And I looked up, he said, is that a real thing? They suspend 4, 5, 6, and 7-year-olds. He said, I can see that they need mental health too.
I asked the same question.
He
You
said,
guys told me they suspended 4 or 5. I didn't know that.
he said, is that a real thing?
Right?
A high school student.
The thing about it, people always, and this is a hot topic right now. You know, they got all of this money, right? But it's irrelevant. And I'm gonna tell you why it's irrelevant. It's where the money is allocated. That's what it's about. Are you putting it towards organizations, mental health services that have a connection to the population that you consider high risk, or the population that you consider are in need? Because a lot of times, and I think Ms. Veronica, Ms. Brown mentioned it, fidelity checks. A lot of times you might have, we have $40 million, right? But that organization, there is no fidelity checks. You don't even know if the client or the student is getting a quality service. Because, this is a deliverable. Well, we did it. And then, we did it. And then people say, we got the money, but where's the results? So it's about who is getting the money and how it's going to be spent at the end of the day.
That's good. What watchdog? Because when Chris called me and says we're going to put $300,000 on mental health in these schools, great. As he's saying, as Vance is saying, okay, where's the watchdog over this to make sure these kids are being served?
Yes. Fidelity checks should be all across the board for any organization, and I think fidelity checks with a component of transparency, where the community can see it. You know, the community can track the data. You know, just like before, and this is synonymous to, like, do you remember the report card politicians used to get?
Yes.
Back in the days, right? They got a report card. Did you do what you said you were going to do? And if you didn't, you got an F. You know, and I think it should kind of work the same way. There should be some transparency. There should be, even the community should have a cohort or a subgroup where they can analyze the data and say, hold on, you need to change this. This doesn't sound right. Or this organization that you allotted $40 million or $10 million is not working out. So,
Well, one of my personal concerns when I think about all the money that's available is that it will go out and everybody will be spending, and they will write reports, and they'll be like dog and pony shows, and it will not make any substantive difference, because in order you needed something extensive and you need something intensive. And if we're going to do something to serve the students and put upstream policies in place, then you have to do it deep and wide, and you have to go long out into the future and say 20 years, or 30 years, or 40 years that we're going to fund, and we're going to make sure that we're going to accomplish it. We're going to fix this problem, because we don't do that. That's been my experience in education. And right now, when you look on the school's website and you talk about equity and issues, I mean, really, you got pretty pictures and pretty videos and pretty words. But when you look to see what has been accomplished, or what they're talking about trying to accomplish, and you can listen to all you got to do is listen to the board meetings, listen to DI, listen to the policy committee meetings, and their words will show you that nothing is being done of substance.
Right. Okay, we've identified the problem. We identified some of the solutions that have been proposed in the form of policy. There seems to be, and if people who are listening in will say, okay, what's the use? You don't have a board that's, well, I shouldn't say this. You don't have a board that's adherent to what's going on. Nothing's being done. So you got an election year coming on. That's the elephant in the room that we can't get around it. We're going to have to talk about that. You're talking about the candidates. I'm sure you guys will be talking to the candidates to see where they feel. What are you looking for? What do you want to hear? Not just rhetorics or platitudes. What do you want in a candidate? Non-partisan, and let me for For the record, I am unaffiliated, so I'm not here to push any agenda. You can look up my registration. So what are we looking for so that this can become policy and there will be equity and we can stop suspending 4 and 5 and 6 and 7-year-olds?
Well, I wanted to reassert that Love Our Children is nonpartisan, and we're laser focused on just one thing, and that is changing the policy. So if we were to talk to candidates, we'd want to know if we could count on their vote to change the policy. You need 4 votes, a majority of the board, to get any change. And so we'd be looking for that vote, for someone to say that they're willing to add at least one sentence to the current student behavior policy 4300, which would say that suspensions will not be used as a consequence for 4, 5, 6, and 7-year-olds, except in the case of guns, drugs, or a violent assault.
Would that be a litmus test?
We would see if they support our policy. That would be a litmus test.
It would be a litmus test for Love Our Children as a group. It would be a litmus test for me as an individual.
Okay.
I'm gonna go back to what Ms. Brown said. I would like a politician that can look into the future. I want to know your plan 10 years from now. I want to know your plan 20 years from now. What plan do you have? I mean, to me, that's interesting. You know, yeah, you can vote for this policy. Yeah. But the thing about it, due to the fact that we don't have any concrete plans and we're using these old methods, something else might come up. We talking about suspensions here. You know, it might be something else might come up because we have no plan for the future. It's like we're always living in the moment. We're not thinking ahead.
I can tell you one thing I would love to happen is that we have a quality school system. We have never successfully gotten together and had what is a quality school system. We were working on it for about 6 or 7 years, and then it just went away, and then you got individual schools. And I would love for us to be a community that you know by the schools that we have, the success of the students that are in them, that we care about the education and the welfare and the quality of life for every child in and around school. That is not something that has ever been present since I've been here. When I first came, we called them have-nots and have schools. And now we call them low performing and high performing. But it's the same acceptability of the idea that you don't have, and you aren't committed to every school being high quality. And that we are selling our schools as high quality when we tell people to come to Wilmington and they can live anywhere in any zip code and know that their child's going to get a quality education. We're doing just the opposite. That's crazy.
Let me say, let me go back to what you said, Ms. Brown. You said we do not have and I put not N on capital N on capital O and capital T. We do not have a quality.
No, if you have a quality educational system, and I'll tell you, my children were coming back. We had 5 grandchildren that were living in in Africa, in different countries. And they were visiting and they were planning to come back. And the paper came in and we looked at the paper. It was an article, this is about 7 or 8 years, it was talking about the schools. And I felt like, well, they're not going to be able to be living in the right zip code coming back. And I thought to myself, I don't even want them to go to the school system. I didn't want them to go to the schools. And that made me sad. It made me cry. I worked in the system. I've loved being in the system. I love education. And for me to think, if they come here, I'll just give up my retirement and send them to private schools. Because I didn't think the schools would be inviting and nurturing to them coming into this county.
Because
they treat, because they are nurturing and caring and inviting to all students. And we have schools that serve students well, and we had students where kids were being very successful, and we have schools where they're not, and we have the folks who are selling houses, our realtors, and we make a big deal of, this is a good school in this neighborhood. We have a responsibility to have a good school in every neighborhood.
When you hear this term Title IX school, and look, America is good for speaking in coded language. When you say Title IX school, let me be honest, that means a school that's in the inner city, a school that's underfunded, a school that's Latino and Black. That's
High suspension rate, probably.
High suspension rate. And so I worked for a company here for 33 years called Hornet. And so when people would get transferred, you had engineers coming in from all over the country. When they would come here, and I learned over the years, especially talking to the women, because they're the house hunters. Mm-hmm. They're the ones, not to stop chauvinistic, but they're the ones that's going to really be into the nuts and bolts of the school system. And they see that word Title IX, and what the realtors are saying is, well, your income won't put you into that. And to some of them that's fine, but some of them feel very offended because they actually have empathy for those people in those neighborhoods that are schools that are underfunded, the schools that are getting the lesson of what they should be getting. That is a problem. You are addressing it through Love Our Children. We don't have a board that really that doesn't have a tenet of what you're saying. How can we ever overcome this? And I know that's a convoluted question that's put in a curious way, but how can we, the person that's up there on that board that's listening, or that's listening on the Zoom, I'm saying, they're like, this doesn't sound right. How can we make things better? Because everybody's concerned about their kids.
Yes, but for this one issue, you can come to the board meetings. I mean, we can put 1,000 people at the board meeting. In January, if they roll up and they see, they can't even find a place to park, and it's 1,000 people, 2,000, 3,000 people, we can show up. We can send, flood them with letters to let them know that we care. We can go on and sign the, you know what it is, Peter, petition. We can sign our petition. You can have your organizations and your churches sign our resolution, but the school board has a survey.
Strategic plan survey.
A strategic plan survey, and it's suspension important. I don't know quite how it reads. Peter might know.
There are 6 questions, and the last one has a list of issues that parents and teachers can indicate which issues are important to them, and suspensions is one of them. Imagine if everyone in the community checked off suspensions with the other things they think are important, and send a message.
Yeah, I think it's better if you show up because they respond to, and this is from observation. They're politicians. Now you have some educators on there. You have educators on there like Mr. Justice, Mr. McMahon. I can't think of
Mr. Wilberboy.
Pete Wilberboy, yes. But basically they're politicians. You know, whatever they are, they're looking at that spectrum of votes, and they're going to react. They're not going to react as former educators. They're going to react as politicians. People need to show up.
Yes, the people need to show up. But one of the things that we say is we want you to find a place that's comfortable for you to advocate. And so what we'll say is if 2,000 people showed up, that'd be great. But just think, it only takes 2 minutes for 10,000 people. If we had 10,000 people, it took 2 minutes to sign a petition and to sign, and then ask their folks to sign a resolution, we would have that on the outside too.
Right.
Because everybody's not gonna come
Right.
in, but it takes about 2 minutes to sign the petition and go online and send a letter so if you're not coming to the board, to send a letter to the board. If you're not coming physically, take that 2 minutes.
That would carry weight, no doubt about it. Petitions carry weight.
We come to the board, flood the board with 1,000, 2,000, but we can do 2,000, 2 minutes.
So, from here on out, what's the process? What is the road you take to get this thing done? Your passion, like I said, you've been out there, you've been pushing it. What road is to be taken to get this thing over the hump? Besides petitions, yes. Try to get people to the board meeting, yes.
Knocking on doors.
Knocking on doors.
Right, it's educating the public and having conversations. Veronica and I have had a lot of one-on-one conversations with faith leaders, business leaders, community leaders. But forums like this allow us to reach a larger audience, and our hope is that we can just keep spreading the message. We find that every time we share our story, when we share the data, people like yourself are amazed. They can't believe it. And once they're educated, hopefully they'll start talking to their family and friends and neighbors, and the word will spread.
I want questions from the board, but I don't see any coming up, and I hope it's not.
Greg,
The feedback action that's causing the lack of participation from the board, because this topic is very important, and it needs to be spread. This kind of forum and setting is very important. I think parents drop their kids off to school and they pick them up from school. And in between those 8.5 hours that's going on, very few, even the most attentive of parents, are really not aware of what's going on. And I think forums such as these, when you guys told me about the suspensions and what was going on, I was like, that can't be true. That was my first reaction. But then knowing you don't make stuff up, you know, it has to be
And
true.
the sad thing about it, it has been true for decades, for several generations. That's in this county. That's the sad part about, that's even sadder.
Has it increased?
Yes.
Let's see, that's the thing about it. That it's increased and not dissipated in.
Yeah, I was cleaning out my garage and found some old information, and it was from, it was 5 years, from 2000 to 2005, and it showed the equity issue and the disproportionality, and it was running about 33% to 33% for blacks and disproportionality to 9% of whites. And so now the disproportionality is which is what got me involved. When Peter said to me about the fact that the black population was 18%,
Right.
and then but there's 60% of the suspensions, and then to just think about all the violence in the community, and the DA said that one of the things that he said at the county and school board meeting after the gun shooting at the high school was that 8 out of 10 of the young men or young people in prison sleeping that night were high school dropouts, and that prison and schools have always had an inverse relationship. But I mean, to me, that was just real powerful, and that again just supports the fact that if we want to make our community safer, and we want to have a great community and great schools, we have to change, and we have to start the change with kindergarten and first grade and keep moving it forward.
They're not kicking them out of school. You mentioned earlier the school to prison pipeline.
I think that was in Peter's opening.
Yeah, but the pipeline is real, and I've read stories that have been substantiated that prisons are based on the rate of suspensions.
The reading level. It's the reading level.
Okay, the reading level.
Fourth grade.
Fourth grade reading level.
Fourth grade reading level. It's almost like you are.
And it's on the stock exchange.
Prophecy. It's like a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah, and it's
You expect this to happen, so you're going to make it happen.
it's profitable. I mean, and why would anybody want to make money off a kid's failure? And
Well, there are a lot of reasons for it.
and have it on the stock exchange and build prison with build prison expecting to fill them up based on the fourth grade reading level.
We're dealing with New Hanover County. New Hanover County in the past has had some really, really controversial issues happening to them. It's under lawsuits right now. Let's not hide that fact. It's being held accountable for past deeds, whether fair or unfair. I'm not going to adjudicate that here. How can, and not to mention the outside loudspeakers that are diverted attention to non-issues, and I'm not even going to mention that. That's a whole ball of wax. But is that overcrowded with the message that you're trying to get across? With all of these external factors playing in, and you're trying to basically keep kids in school and learn, achieve, be the best they can be, not to put them on the streets, and got all these external factors coming in, and the board is like, okay, we hear you, but these guys over here saying stuff that we need to do what they say because they're bad. Did you get that feel? I do.
Well,
I mean, these guys show up, and they're ready to just, you know what? I'm 68 years old. I have never lived in this county where I've seen a board of education meeting had to be postponed because of unruly and not being civil. So that's what you're up against.
well, one of the places I am now is that I can control my own actions and my determination to fight for something and to advocate for it. And so if they're making noise and they're doing that, that's their thing. Our goal is to try to be as strategic and passionate and stay focused and active and keep moving forward until we achieve the goal. And I want to add that one of the challenges that we have is that as a community, I have always thought this ever since I've been in Wilmington, and I came here in 1968, that we are a child-centered, caring community. That's why we didn't do anything about corporal punishment until it was a lawsuit. That's why we didn't respond effectively to students in the 1970s, and that's why you ended up with a student movement. We call it Wilmington 10, but it really was a student movement, just like Tiananmen Square was a student movement. We have a history of allowing our children, especially the poor children and brown children, and black children, to go to school in. We've done a better job now because we have a lot of new schools, but we had a history of kids being in mold-infested schools, 6 schools, and they were in them longer, I think, than they should have been in them. And then the abuse issue was something that also speaks to the fact that information, all of this information is circulating in our community, and we don't care until mostly it's a lawsuit or something. We just kind of let it fester. And it's our children. And if you look at, I traveled to England once and went to Doncaster, England, a small town. And we went to in that town they had a center. And that center was huge. And everything any child could want, you could go to that place and find it, and it didn't cost you anything. Because they cared about their children.
That's not foreign to the United States, and.
I said New Hanover County.
Huh?
I said New Hanover County is not child-centered.
Right. But the fact, when you talk about England, that's a practice that I've seen at several places in this country. For instance, let me give you an example. If you go back to child nutrition and child care, that didn't start with the government.
Right.
That started in Oakland, California. We call it Black Panthers.
Right.
And the government adopted their program and incorporated what they were doing into. And I think what you're trying to do is sort of similar, is that you got an idea that, as far as I'm concerned, it needs to be adopted yesterday, as far as the policy.
Yes.
However, back then you had a government that was receptive. There was a man named Lyndon Johnson that said, see what they're doing out there, let's put it into my great society, and he incorporated it into it. And so,
It's public health.
public health,
Right.
that's exactly the way. So, I think the mission, and please correct me if I'm wrong, I think the mission that you're defining in is that you are trying to get these people, because the board is the ultimate answer. You're trying to get them to adopt this positive change.
Yes.
And I'll let you elaborate on
Well, it benefits all children. And it also acknowledges that 4, 5, 6, and 7-year-olds are different than the children that are in the middle school and the high school. So that one-size-fits-all policies are not in place, because policies that are really designed for older children harm our youngest children. And again, we're talking about children who are still learning about learning about decentering from themselves and understanding another person's point of view, learning communication skills, learning how to express their feelings, and all those are things that they can come to school and learn about. And the positive change is that we want to keep them in school so they can learn the behaviors, they can learn the skills they need to become independent learners, become independent people. So the change we're focusing on is positive, it's for all children, and as Veronica said, we need to start with the youngest ones.
And the ultimate goal of them going to school is to become a good citizen and to be able to have a quality life. Personally, I worked in tobacco. I picked cotton, and one summer I worked at a hotel in the summer. The change, the life that I've been enjoyed is because I was in a community that was a real village, and I went to schools where I was nurtured and cared for and felt good about myself. And these children need that opportunity. And what suspension does is challenge not just whether they have a high reading or math school. It challenges the whole future aspect of life. Where are they going to live? What they going to be able to afford to eat? What assets are they going to have to health care? That's the big thing. And then the other part is, when they don't do it, it's another generation. And when that generation doesn't do it, and we've already done 3, and they want us to wait for another one to fail.
The county already acknowledged disparity in all of the institutions.
Right.
They clearly said racism is a public health crisis.
Right.
Our school is not excluded from that. So if they mean what they say, racism as a public health crisis, this is an ideal situation that they should be looking at differently if they want to save face and do the right thing. I know we have the Rise Again initiative, we have all of these things going on, but this issue, how does that fit in with racism as a public health crisis and a remedy? Are they wrapping their minds around this is a form of disparity? This is a form of also, to a degree, of marginalization, because certain children that are suspended, they will be disenfranchised, they will be boxed in, they will be cut out from a competitive market due to not being interested in school, bad grades, possible interaction with law enforcement. All of these things play a part. But that's something that I think the school board, that's the county, I think that should always be on the forefront of their mind. Racism as a public health crisis. Is this part of that public health crisis? What is the alternative? So that's just, you know.
Well, yeah, they have acknowledged it. Not only have they acknowledged it, but they once committed after the shooting at New Hanover, that's in the Hanover. They went on record and said, we're going to give $350 million.
Yeah, so it's an issue there. They see it's an issue.
Well, they know it's an issue now. You know, now, $250 million was a mighty ambitious undertaking, but that you can't admit it no more than that, and that's an issue.
Yes.
Are they going to address the issue?
Yes.
And we have 8 states in the country that have addressed this issue already. And so we're not breaking new ground.
How about counties in North Carolina? No. I'm surprised at that. And it's simply because you would think of more progressive counties like Durham or Wake or to some degree Guilford.
I know that, I believe it's Wake has some programs they're trying at the high school level. So other counties are working on it. But in terms of having a policy change, like we're describing, I'm not aware of any in North Carolina.
You mentioned earlier a report card. I think that was Vance had mentioned it, that we need to have a report card and oversight to monitor some of these things that's going on. In 2 weeks we'll have a new year, or 3 weeks we'll have a new year, which means we'll have a new election, and you'll have people that are running. Obviously you're going to be bringing them in to sit down and talk with prospective candidates, and you'll have your checklist, and I got it right here. How will you know that they're really being sincere or not just pandering to the group that they're speaking before?
If they vote for the policy, that's what you know.
I'm talking about candidates.
No, if they get elected, you only know what they tell you.
Right.
And then it follows with them either acting on what they said correctly and faithfully or not. And that's just the way the political process works.
I would know a good candidate if they put themselves in the hot seat. They say something very uncomfortable, right? Pertaining to the issue, right? Pertaining to, yeah, I'm all for it. If they're all in, right? That's how you can tell what they're willing to sacrifice, right? That's how you can tell a candidate that has vigor or have good intentions is what they're willing to sacrifice. On a physical level, on their constituent people that have influence over, how much are they involved in the movement? Like, hey guys, I want to stand with you guys. Hey guys, I want to bring my supporters to support you guys. Hey, I know this person. You know, I always gauge the level of sacrifice and not necessarily how eloquent you are or nice suit. No, that's irrelevant. Candidates, what are you willing to sacrifice? It's the same thing that we spoke about before, a precinct meeting. You come there, you talk with, can I have your support? No, what is it based on? You know, so it has to be some tangible things, some things that's active, because I think that Love Our Children, I think all of this time that they've been working and that they've been just speaking well, or just, I don't think that's going to get it. I think that you actually have to put some sweat equity into it, because they're putting sweat equity into it. So there should be some balance there. Okay, candidate, if you want some support, you know, where's your sweat equity? You know, so.
You guys are laboring, you can't discount that. I mean, you're in the trenches, you're doing the, we would say, the grunt work.
So that's what you have to do to bring about change.
Yeah, I think eventually you'll get there. It's not a matter of if but when, because what I see in the future is people, we got to get the people excited over this issue now. I am, because of what you guys have been doing. Had you not come along, I would have not been, to be quite honest. So, and so you got to get more meetings listening, you know, who was just sailing along until, what, okay, now this ain't right, and then you kept pounding it. You got, will that be enough to get a base of your support? And when I say base, I'm not speaking of a particular group, but a base to support what you're trying to do and instill in this community.
Well, we know we're making progress. We have more people supporting us now than when we started. But, and it's just a lot of work, as you said.
Somebody mentioned earlier in passing about the clergy, the churches. How have they been involved in that? But I see Ms. Brown smiling, because whenever I ask people the question.
Well, I was going to say, stay tuned for January.
Okay, stay tuned for January?
Yes.
Okay, is there a big announcement and stuff that's coming up?
Well, we'll see.
We're working with some faith leaders.
Okay.
Yeah.
And hope that they will participate in the January board meeting. So we're working on it as we speak.
Okay, well, if you can get some of those, then I think you're well on your way, because they speak to a larger constituent than I do.
Right.
And I've always wondered about, okay, you know, I grew up in an era where they were the leaders. They were the ones that did it. You didn't go to them, they came to you.
Right.
And so I think the roles are reversed now, but that's good. I'll stay tuned for January. It is announcements that might have. What portends for the very near future, as far as trying to get this, you know, school tomorrow somewhere on the next day, somewhere in Hanover County, what you're trying to prevent is going to happen. In the immediate future, how can this situation be addressed to help that child or children to maybe not get suspended, maybe not get thrown out into the streets, as Brother Vance would say, maybe get a second chance, or look at that from a mental point of view, mental health point of view. What can be done in the meantime until we can get policy, as you guys are so desperately seeking? Because we don't have the policy in place to protect these kids. That's why you're up here.
That's the one, and to give them a warranty against those
Yeah.
minor infractions. That's a challenging question.
I would say we have talked to some teachers that we know are doing wonderful things in their classroom. We've met with some elementary school principals who've described programs that they're using in their schools. So we know there are places where good things are happening. The goal will be to have that replicated in all the schools, so that all children have access to a policy in which they're kept in school and provided the services they need.
Yeah.
Other records, yes.
I would say activate community health workers in all of your schools. Activate community health workers. If we're going to use public health, activate community health workers.
So what do you mean when you say activate?
activate, make sure that they are at every single school, that teachers, parents have advocates and support. Not just the TAs, you know, community health workers can help too. They can help with mediation, they can help with advocacy level, when dealing with other institutions. If your child is involved with DSS, if your child is involved with juvenile justice, they can help in a lot of different areas. Also programming, you know, sometimes children have to have programs outside of schools. Community health workers with youth empowerment solutions, they have that component too. Leadership development, they have that component too. So there is endless possibilities. This is the thing. Will you consider it? That's the thing. Will you break your little Happy Meal box and try something else? So, yeah, it's a lot of things that can be activated. You know, just gotta be willing.
And this is just thinking about New Hanover County. One of the things that I think can cause the county to start moving is actually a lawsuit. Because I really think there's enough evidence out there to comfortably challenge whether or not they are fulfilling their ethical responsibility. I think the equity issues are out there for many indicators that they could use that, and they have to respond to that. They aren't able to ignore it. Now they can challenge it, but if you do a lawsuit around educational, around kids getting an adequate and fair education, then they have to respond, and that creates movement. You talked about, I mentioned that Peter mentioned that they got rid of corporal punishment. And I remember exactly when they did that, and that was immediately after they had an incident and a lawsuit. And when you think about us finally addressing sexual abuse that had gone on for decades and generations, it was the lawsuit that made them start moving forward. I'm hoping that our board will want to do what we have put emphasis on, because it's right for children, and they will ask the question: how do we stop harming children, and how do we help them, and how does the school system get all the benefits that come from keeping kids in school? The teachers get a benefit. The community get a benefit, parents it makes it better for everybody. And I just want them to ask the question, how can we do this? And there's enough intellectual power within our own school system that if we ask that question, we could solve this problem immediately.
But the litigation is cool with me, because he mentioned Dr. Eaton and all the wrong that happened. And he litigated, and it seems that is something they understand. Yes, Mr. Robert.
In New Hanover County.
New Hanover County. Some places don't have to take it to that extreme, or call litigation extreme, but necessary. But that is a language that is serious. We can't not have them come in our office anymore and pat them on the back and tell them how great they are, how articulate they are, and then watch them leave and then do what another group wants us to do. Is that on the table? Well, it must be, because you just mentioned it.
Well, I think we have, in terms of talking about all the ways and opportunities that we can help children stay in school, and we can have the benefit of changing the policy. Well, if you are a group like our group, you're talking about everything.
Everything.
But our hope is that as we go to the board and we try to go respectfully. Yes, and I've been in the system, I work pre-K in the central office. And so I'm hoping that they will listen to the information, read the research, and be committed to reforming our school and making it better. What we're asking helps everyone. It hurts no one.
Yes, yes.
I mean, it helps everybody.
Well, here's a mundane question. Your statement of fact that you just commented, it helps everyone. So why haven't we gotten the results that we've so desired? Well, Vance, you want to take a shot at it?
Whoa. Why haven't we got the results? Whoa.
It does help everyone.
It helps everyone, long term.
Man, I could put that with anything. Why do we poison the water? Why do we poison the air? We shouldn't do it. It affects everyone. It's just this ability to just be foolish. But it's also this thing about, and it's this arrogance too, is that you would rather see something destroyed or fall apart than to say, you know what, I'm wrong. I need to correct it. And that's what I see here. I see this arrogance, or I want to keep this culture. I just want to keep it in place. As things just fall apart, you still want to keep this culture, knowing that it's detrimental, knowing that it's it divides people, but also it makes people believe that, like, disconnect themselves from the system, disconnect themselves from institutions. Certain types of institutions, because they say there is no intelligence here, there is no humanity here, there is no empathy here. So I don't know, and this is just not this institution. When you say that, I think about what people say about certain institutions don't address their toxic behavior in this town. They always talk about this monster six, City council, you better not say nothing against them. The county commissioner, you better not say nothing against them. The hospital, you better not say nothing against them. The Wilmington PD, the sheriff's department, the board of education. Those institutions, you told, if your organization, you better not, because that could disconnect you from funding, that could disconnect you. So it's like this cultural thing that they have going, this arrogance that they have going on, that they, where the common people, the people that are really connected to the issue, the people that have a heart, the people that are not moving off of artificial intelligence. They are real people that believe in humanity. These people sometimes are ostracized and viewed as the enemy, when they should be celebrated and they should be honored and they should be listened to. So.
To your question, what we're describing is punitive discipline. That's a paradigm. It has existed for a very long time, like corporal punishment. Now we have evidence to say that there's a better way for us to work with children and correct their behavior. And so one of the things you're doing is transitioning from an old paradigm that people were raised with. Their mother went to school with punitive discipline. They went to school with punitive discipline. And so that paradigm exists, and it has been valid for a long time. We want to go to restorative justice. We want to go to behavioral corrections, because we know more than we knew 50 years ago and 100 years ago. So we're trying to help them get to the tipping point So they moved from that punitive model to one that supports children. And we have enough evidence to say that suspensions don't work for children in this environment where we are right now. So the question is, we're changing from one paradigm to the other. We're trying to put the policies in to support it, and we're trying to get to the tipping point so that it will happen.
Basically, what you're saying is resistance to change.
Yeah, yes.
They need the moral courage and the will to want to do it.
But really, is it that big of a change to say, hey, instead of putting 4, 5, 7-year-olds on the street or in the crib, it's really more appropriate. Let's see if we can't work them, see what's the source of or whatever needs to be addressed. That's not a monumental transitional change.
It is for the board.
But yeah, apparently so. Apparently
It is for this board.
It is.
Based upon what Peter just said, is that no other state, no other county is doing it. So it could be historic. New Hanover County, the first county, to end school suspension for that age group.
Yeah, well,
It could set a precedent.
I would love audience feedback now, because I know people who are listening got a lot to say. And I do apologize that we can't get that right now. But if I was in the audience and I was looking on, a question I would say, and sometimes I get this on my phone, on my show, is that you're dealing with people, and my show, I don't want to say it's cynicism, but they're realists.
Okay.
I hear comments, well, there's some cynical. They're realists. Realism is that you guys go to these people, and you meet with them, and they're cordial, and they're courteous. I know every one of those persons, like one of those people on the phone. 7 of them I know. They're courteous people, they're good people. But they're going to tell you exactly what you want to hear. Now, some of them, you got a couple of them that's going to, that you probably got in your back pocket. So you might not have to try to give them a hard sell. But all of them will be courteous. And then they're not going to do what needs to be done, as you put it, Ms. Brown, the moral courage or the fortitude to do what needs to be done. And they've probably got people who are giving them a pat on the back for not doing it. To the people in the audience who want to know who are saying, and I'm speaking for a lot of people, who are saying, what's the use? What do you say to them?
Because if you want to achieve something, you can't stop working for it. That's the only way you ensure that you're never going to achieve it. If you want to achieve everything that has been achieved when it was a change of policy, people advocated and worked for it. History tells us that. My sitting here is the monument to the fact that you can change laws and you can change policies and you can change society. But you have to put in the work.
We know you can change. Pete knows you can change. Vance is a little bit younger than we are. And so we've seen monumental, you said you used to fit cotton.
Yes, working tobacco.
I used to help bricklayer, lay bricks in Wellington when bricklaying was all done by black men in this town.
Right.
And so Vance mentioned Dr. E.
Yeah.
I remember that lawsuit. That's how far back. So we know it's possible. We have now a new school that might not be so, they can read about it in the history books, and they can see it on Netflix in a historical documentary. They haven't really lived through it or seen it like we have or witnessed it up close. And a lot of the skepticism, well justified, may I add, when I talk to these people and when we converse is that, and I don't blame them, because if I was in that age group, I would feel exactly the same way.
Now, what age group are you talking about?
I'm talking about anywhere from the millennials, let's say that.
Okay.
The millennials. That, they're right, because what they see, you turn on your TV, you see a lot of yelling and screaming, bad language and signs and marching. Okay, you got to have your school board meetings by Zoom, and I know I keep hopping on this, but it's there. And so when they see that, and they're supposed to be our leaders, and they're supposed to be the people, what are they supposed to think when you say we can change this? Pete, what's happening?
We just repeat what Veronica said. If you do nothing, you'll guarantee that nothing will change. So my hope is that the people who want to bring about change will work towards it and be hopeful. That's what gets me up in the morning. I have hope. And every day, Veronica and I do something.
Let's have somebody who really knows these people better than I do. And he sits right over there. And he deals with these people every day. Tell me if I'm wrong, brother. And if I'm wrong, where did I go wrong?
The thing about it is you can't tell people how loud they should scream. People have all of these different forms of resistance, all these different approaches. Somebody might say, you know what, I'm cool and collected. That's not my approach. That's not my strategy. But somebody might see your movement, and somebody might say, that hurt me too. Man, I feel you. And they might scream, and they might holler. That's not to say that their approach is wrong, but their connection to the pain is sometimes a little different. But we have to hear their pain and not necessarily muffle their pain. Everybody's experience is quite different in this movement, in this form of resistance, right? And there is not an ideal approach. If we just look at the movement, the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, you had all of these different variations of movements and organizations, but the main goal was liberation. The main goal was peace. And I think that all of these voices are valid. Just like you're a Navy man, well, infantry, sometimes we had to call the people on the water. I can't hit everything. I can't see everything. Sometimes you got to call air support too. Man, I need you to clear this whole thing because you can't get there as fast. But all of you have different duties. You got the sea, you got the air, and you got the land, the infantry. You got different things that you're doing, but it's the same mission. It's not that one is better than the other. It's just that, they're all doing their different parts.
I don't think it's nonpartisan, because right now, I see a partisan line. How do you get the people from Creekwood to join with the people from Pine Valley or some of the more affluent communities and say, hey, let's all get together on this horse there. Because as you said, everyone benefits.
Everyone.
And you can have people from the different sectors of the community joining you in this fight.
We do. That's right, we do. But again, we are, Peter and I think, started in April. Mm-hmm. We went to the meeting in March, but I think we came together in the 1st of April, like a meeting. And we have been working every day ever since then to move this advocacy forward. And we go out and speak to everybody who will speak to us. We've been in Houston Moore. We've been to Riceville Beach. We've been to every organization that will speak to us. We've spoken to the ministers, and it's a process. And what we try to do is be in that process every day. And we have Peter's song. We love that. But we have Facebook, we have Instagram, we have our church, and all of that is planning. We meet and invite people, expanding. So we're in it for the long haul.
Okay. All right. I think we live in a thing where everything's instant. We want instant coffee, instant milk, instant eggs, everything.
You want a microwave
Yeah,
decision.
microwave decision. And so I'm hoping that we can get it. It's going to start with the policy, and you open the program with that, the policy. It boils down to the policy, which means it boils down to those elected officials who constitute the policy.
Yeah.
And then it's relayed to the superintendent who enforces the policy. So that's where it's gonna formulate. In the state was a prognosis on approximate time of arrival.
I wouldn't do that at this time. We're going to stay focused on the process.
No matter how long it takes.
Advocacy, strengthening that advocacy, trying to do TV, trying to do radio, knocking on people's doors, passing out flyers. Every single thing that we can do, we're going to continue to try to work towards, because I mean, it's the right thing. It's professionally right. It's if you go to a church and you talk about faith and you talk about taking care of young kids, it's the right thing to do.
Everything Veronica mentioned are things just educating the public. I think there's so many people who are unaware of what's going on. As they become educated, I think they become involved at a level that they're comfortable with.
And you do it.
They said it. I'm just. Yeah, but this is the thing, is that Sokoto House and my own organization, Vance, Rawlings, and Quality Life Blueprint, and everybody that's part of Sokoto House, just putting the word out and just offering our support. But definitely just having a conversation, and then also creating platforms here that people can discuss it and it can be incorporated into what we're doing, whether it's poetry, whether it's a giveaway, and just putting the word out. Because I know Creekwood, Houston Moore, every sector of this community. But I think that it's moving faster than people think, as far as the word, and as far as people hearing about the situation compared to a few months ago. People are talking about it. Organizations that really haven't talked about it before, they might not, get involved, but this is a starting point. Like, hey, did you hear about such and such? Did you hear about this initiative? So process. In every movement, there's a process, and I'm just here to support it. Yeah.
I've been here a long time, and I didn't hear about it. You guys came on the show one day, and I'm like, really? 4 and 5-year-olds? I'm familiar with middle school. I'm familiar with high school. But, so I think, keep educating. That's the way to do it. Eventually, you will win. But when this will eventuate.
But everybody we tell about this, they said they support it. They respond the same way. Are you kidding me? Or I didn't know they were suspending 4, 5, 6, or 7-year-olds. That's what everyone says.
Is there the possibility of, last question, is there any possibility of there being a moratorium on that? Because right now, it is part of their policy to do that, obviously, because they're doing it. So while we're in while this is being pursued as policy, couldn't we push for a moratorium and say, hey, this age group up to 9, I think, up to 9, 10, no suspensions, and you work it out. As Chris Crosby showed on record as saying, the cavalry is coming with the answers to some of these things. Is there a possibility of a moratorium that these youngsters, these tots, will not be suspended?
As far as strategy goes,
Yes.
it's not a good idea to negotiate against yourself. I say we stand firm.
Right, but I'm saying while the policy is being pursued, the main thing is that you're doing this for the kids, you're not doing this for yourself. and so the object is to keep them in school in an atmosphere that's conducive to learning. And so a moratorium would keep them in school while you advocate for the policy and push for the policy.
Well, my thing would be, if you can do a moratorium, you can pass the policy.
Absolutely.
that's all I can think.
Right.
That's my only response.
So you won't, I won't belabor the point, you won't push for a moratorium.
If you can do for moratorium, pass the policy.
We're asking for one sentence,
Right.
adding one sentence to one policy will benefit all children immediately.
I like that steadfast approach.
And the teachers, long term, and if we start that in with the 4-year-olds, the 12th grade teachers are going to benefit from it,
Yeah.
and the community.
Yeah. I was just, my mind was saying, what do we do to keep them in school? Because
Pass the policy.
you gotta solve it. Well, yes. And then you saw aptly pointed, I was dealing with it in transitive folks. And then again, let me say this. Knowing all of the Board of Education members, you do have some on your side. You got some that you probably don't have to give the hard sell. And then you got some that you probably have to, so you know better than anyone what you're dealing with. I don't have to sit here and give a commentary on it. You know what you're going. Then the last words, closing statements.
Thank you very much for moderating
I'm honored to.
and Vance, thanks for inviting us here.
Vance is the person that's on it.
Yes, thank you very much.
It gives us an opportunity to educate a larger part of the population.
And a special thanks for the audience
Yes.
that came to listen.
Yeah, I'm sure we had some listeners that just couldn't get through.
Right, well, tell them if they go on our website,
Okay.
they can email us, they can call us, and we would love for anybody who is experiencing, you asked the question about what are some of the remedies when kids are suspended, but if someone is having a challenging time, they can call Peter or I, we'd be glad to. Call Peter or me, and we'll be glad to help them.
And I understand you feel about the moratorium because, you stop bending and then, that is, compromise and sort of but I was thinking of a temporary thing to keep kids in school. But you probably, your approach is probably right.
The policy will keep them in
And
school.
I've been hanging around politicians too long.
Changing the policy will do it.
That's why I said I've been into that line of work, saying compromise, but stick to your guns, man. Because look, we're on camera now, right? Are we finished?
No, we're still on.
Oh, we're still on.
I want to say something.
I can't say what I want to say.
I wanted to say something to you, brother, is that years to come, right? Children will be able to look back and say, you know what? They fought for me.
Yeah, like we did not need.
Yeah, they fought for me. They did something, and some of them become adults, and they say, wow, they still say, hey, we got some people that
Man,
fought
you
for
still
us.
be here. You be mine, you sitting over here.
Hey, this might work quicker than you think,
I think, and I don't mind being on it, because it's nothing I haven't said before. I think you got the right approach. If you can, there are certain people, and he spoke on it so eloquently. There are things in this town that people fear, and they say, don't mess with it. But there are also, and you were talking about the institution, but there are also people that are actually feared. And some of these people who are feared aren't really bad people. If you get with the right people, things get expedited very, very quickly. You've been here a long time.
Yes, I do.
And you know what I'm talking
I
about.
do.
And if you want to, I always tell people, you want something done, you got to get people with the influence and the money. That's what it boils down to in Wilmington, North Carolina. And so the people with
All
the
grassroots.
all grassroots. You got a strong grassroots movement. You can do it.
Yes.
And-
Both will help you bring in a lot of, and if you have enough money. Those are
Yeah.
the three things that get you change.
Yeah, it's I always subscribe to the theory of Al Capone. He said you can go a long way with a kind word, but you can go further with a kind word and a gun. And so what you can do is that you can have that. Grassroots works 100% of the time. I've never seen a good, strong grassroots movement fail. But while you're doing that, you incorporate these people who have the influence. And they're not adverse to what you're doing.
Right.
Case in point, the Koch brothers. They fought for prison reform. You know.
I'm surprised.
Yeah. Now, you would think, well, these guys as conservative as they come, they're the right wing as they come. But they actually fought for something that I felt passionate about, and that was locking somebody 4 years up for a joint, you know. And we were on the same side, and that's what I'm talking about. In battle, as he alluded to earlier, your allies, you don't know who your allies may be. And so if you get the people who, some of those people on the board might say, oh, they got this person, that might expedite the process.
We understand.
And you know a lot of people, you know some of these people.
Oh, yeah, well, we're in the process of meeting and talking every week.
Yeah.
That's what we try to do.
I guarantee you get them and they see their name on your list and they will stay. Yeah, maybe we need to go in the conference over this thing.
And maybe you can give us a list of some of those people too, you know. We'll knock on their door.
Yeah, sure. I mean, but they wield the power. The power is wielded in Wilmington by the very few. It's always been that way, that the very few wield it. But sometimes they can be on your side. And grassroots, I never discount it, because they see grassroots too, and they say, well, you better do this. We don't want no controversy. It's bad for business. Do what these people
Bad
want.
for business, it's a good phrase to have
Yeah, it's bad for
on your
business.
side.
Adopt that policy.
I think Kevin is trying to play a video.
Yeah, let's, to wrap up.
We have our song.
Let's-
So Kevin is going to play Love Our Children's promo video.
Okay.
For in-school suspension.
Sometimes they whisper, sometimes they shout. Sometimes they steal or they wiggle about. They may obey or be out of control. They just for 5, 6, and 7 years old. You got to love our children. Love our children. You got to love our children and keep them learning in school. They've been suspended when they show disrespect. They've been suspended talking to you, school board.
That's very, very good, very, very professional. Who did that?
Steve wrote it.
Okay.
I wrote the song, made the video, and
Wow.
Veronica's daughter-in-law was the vocalist.
That
It's
is,
really nice. I like it.
that is,
That's a promo video.
yes it is. I mean, that is, that's good.
It tells
Is it
everything.
gonna be on the website?
It is on the
It's on the
website.
website already.
We've been pushing it out on social media. It's on YouTube. And if people go to our website, I can give the address for that. It's love-r-children.com. And they can see the video there. Or they can Google it on YouTube.
That was good, outstanding.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
I
That was
appreciate it.
You're fabulous.
So
Thank you, it was
Thank you.
fun.
Thank you.
Always.
Appreciate it. It's